It all began in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name and the street smelled of fresh bread and morning dew. I grew up in a house that was modest, nothing fancy, but filled with love. My parents were simple people, always working hard to give me the best they could. They never had much money, but they had big dreams for me. I remember my father sitting on the porch one evening, staring at the sky, and telling me, "One day, you will do something great. You just need to find your path." I didn't understand everything back then, but I felt the weight of his words. School was a challenge. I loved learning, but I struggled with English. My teachers would speak so quickly, and I could barely keep up. At first, I thought it didn't matter. I was good at science and math, and I could solve problems faster than anyone in my class. But then, everything changed when I realized that to follow my dream of becoming a doctor, I had to know English. Medical books, instructions, and even communicating with patients all required it. I felt a mix of excitement and fear. I wanted it badly, but the path seemed impossible. I started small. Every day after school, I would sit by my desk and practice simple words. I would write them over and over until my hand hurt. My mother noticed and would bring me warm tea, saying, "Don't rush, my child. One step at a time." I remember those quiet evenings vividly. The sun would sink behind the hills, and the room would glow with golden light, and I would whisper English words to myself, trying to make sense of them. It felt strange at first, almost like speaking another language inside your own mind, but I kept at it. I made mistakes, oh, so many mistakes. I remember once reading a sentence from a book and confidently saying it out loud to my brother, only for him to burst out laughing. "You said it all wrong," he teased. I felt embarrassed but also determined. I told myself that laughing at mistakes was part of learning. Slowly, day by day, I began to notice small victories. I could understand a simple story without asking anyone to translate. I could answer a question in class without feeling my cheeks burn. Those tiny moments felt like winning the biggest prize. Then came the day that changed everything. Our school announced a national English competition. I hesitated. Competing? In English? Me? But my teacher encouraged me, saying, "You have grown so much. This is your chance to see how far you have come." I decided to try, even though my hands shook as I signed up. Preparing for the competition was grueling. I would wake up before sunrise and read stories aloud, trying to mimic the sound of native speakers. I listened to English radio, repeating every word, even when I had no idea what it meant. My parents supported me silently, proud but anxious. The day of the competition arrived. The auditorium was enormous, filled with students from every corner of the country. I could feel my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. When my turn came, I walked to the stage, trying to steady my trembling hands. I began reading my passage. At first, the words stumbled out, hesitant and uneven, but then something clicked. I felt the rhythm of the sentences, the flow of the language. The room seemed to fade away, and I was no longer just a boy from a small town. I was telling a story in English. The applause at the end was overwhelming. I didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. For the first time, I realized that I could truly learn this language. Encouraged, I pushed myself further. I started speaking English with anyone who would listen, practicing in the market, with neighbors, even strangers on buses. At first, people stared at my awkward accent, but some smiled and corrected me gently. Each interaction made me braver. I discovered that learning English was not just about words, it was about connecting with people, understanding their lives, and sharing your own. I started imagining myself as a doctor, speaking to patients from different backgrounds, explaining complicated things in words they could understand. That vision kept me going, even when nights were long and my eyes were sore from reading. When I reached high school, opportunities began to open up. I joined English clubs, participated in debates, and even started writing short stories in English. My teachers noticed the change. They said I had become confident and articulate. I felt proud, but I also felt the weight of what was coming next. Becoming a doctor was still a distant dream, one that required years of study, exams, and determination. But now, I had a tool that would help me more than anything else: language. English was no longer a barrier, it was a bridge. One evening, while sitting on my bed surrounded by medical books and English dictionaries, I realized how far I had come. I remembered the shy boy who struggled to speak a single sentence and smiled. The journey was far from over, but I knew that the hardest step, believing I could, was behind me. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would study harder, practice more, and never let fear stop me. I would become a doctor, not just to achieve a personal dream, but to help others, to heal, and to make a difference in the world. Months turned into years. The language became easier, and so did life's challenges. I still stumbled sometimes, still faced moments of doubt, but I had learned to keep moving forward. Every story I read, every conversation I had, and every patient I would eventually meet would remind me of the journey that started in a small room with a boy and a dream. Medical school was nothing like I had imagined. It was harder, faster, and more demanding than anything I had faced before. The first day felt like stepping into a completely new world. The corridors were long and sterile, the walls lined with posters of the human body, diagrams of the brain, and colorful charts I could barely take in. Students rushed past me with notebooks clutched to their chests, speaking in a language that was sometimes too fast to understand. For a moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake, but I reminded myself of the journey that had brought me here. I had learned English not just to speak, but to understand, to communicate, to survive in this world. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The first lecture was a blur of words I had never heard before. Terms like pathology, cardiology, and anatomy filled the air, and I scribbled notes as quickly as my hand could move. I felt lost, but I refused to give up. I stayed after class, asking questions, clarifying meanings, and practicing pronunciation quietly in the corner of the library. My professors noticed my determination and encouraged me, often saying, "You have potential. Keep pushing." The real challenge came with practical work. I remember the first time I entered the anatomy lab, standing in front of a cadaver. I felt a wave of fear and respect. The smell, the coldness, the reality of human life, it was overwhelming. But this was what I had dreamed of. I reminded myself that every doctor had stood here, trembling at first, and that I could too. I listened carefully, followed instructions, and slowly began to feel confident. Each lesson, each hands-on experience was a step closer to my dream. English continued to play a crucial role. I had to read complex medical texts, write reports, and communicate with classmates from different countries. Sometimes it was exhausting, especially when tiredness clouded my mind and I struggled to find the right words. But I had learned that perseverance was stronger than fear. I would read passages aloud at night, even repeating them under my breath as I walked back from class. I discovered that language was not just a tool, but a bridge to knowledge, connecting me to information and people I could not otherwise reach. Friendships formed slowly but meaningfully. There was Maria, who came from Mexico and struggled with English as much as I once had. We helped each other with difficult words, practiced medical terminology together, and shared meals when we could. Then there was David, a senior student who guided me through the complex systems of the hospital, always patient and encouraging. These friendships made the struggle bearable and even enjoyable. I learned that becoming a doctor was not a solitary journey, it was a collective effort, supported by mentors, peers, and even patients who trusted us. The long hours of study were only part of the story. Emotional challenges came in waves. I remember my first encounter with a patient who was gravely ill. The fear in their eyes reflected my own insecurity. I wanted to say the right words to comfort them, but I hesitated. Then I remembered the countless hours of English practice, the days when I repeated words over and over until they felt natural. I took a deep breath, chose my words carefully, and spoke. The patient smiled, a small, trembling smile, and in that moment, I felt the power of language, empathy, and connection. I realized then that becoming a doctor was not only about knowledge but about communication, trust, and understanding. Exams were brutal. I faced nights when the clock ticked past midnight, when my fingers ached from writing and my mind screamed for rest. But I reminded myself of the boy in the small town, the boy who had struggled with English and had dared to dream. Every challenge was a test not just of my medical knowledge, but of my determination, resilience, and courage. I celebrated small victories, understanding a lecture fully, successfully explaining a concept to a classmate, or receiving a word of encouragement from a professor. Each triumph was a step closer to my ultimate goal. As years passed, my confidence grew. I could read English medical journals without hesitation, present cases to professors, and even assist in surgeries with steady hands and a clear mind. I began to see the bigger picture, the responsibility of a doctor, the privilege of touching lives, and the importance of never stopping learning. I realized that English had been the key that unlocked the doors to this world. Without it, my knowledge would remain locked away, inaccessible to the patients and peers I needed to communicate with. Graduation day arrived, a moment filled with pride, relief, and reflection. Wearing my white coat, standing among classmates who had become friends, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The journey had been long and hard, but every struggle, every sleepless night, every mistake had led me here. I remembered my parents, the small town, the evenings spent repeating words until my voice grew hoarse. I realized that the journey was not just about learning English or becoming a doctor, it was about believing in myself, embracing challenges, and never giving up. The first day as a practicing doctor was unforgettable. Walking into the hospital, meeting patients, and making real decisions for the first time was both thrilling and terrifying. I carried with me not only medical knowledge but the lessons of perseverance, patience, and communication. I remember the shy boy who struggled with English and smiled. That boy had become a doctor, ready to face the world with skill, empathy, and courage. Looking back, I understood the true power of language. Learning English had given me more than the ability to read or speak. It had opened doors to education, friendships, experiences, and opportunities one could never have imagined. It had transformed my life, giving me the confidence to pursue a dream that once seemed impossible. I realized that no matter where you start, no matter how difficult the path, learning, effort, and persistence can change everything. And so here I am, a doctor who once struggled to say simple words, sharing this story with you. My hope is that it inspires you to pursue your own dreams, to overcome challenges, and to never underestimate the power of learning. Every small step matters, and every effort counts. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and join me as we continue exploring journeys of learning, growth, and transformation.